Welcome back. So, we continue our discussion on ocular inspection. And we are in part 2 of the issue of agricultural tenant, wherein during the conduct of your ocular inspection, may nakita kayong tenant doon. This time, he does not exercise the right of preemption or right of redemption. So what happens if the tenant does not exercise the right of preemption or the right of redemption? Sabi niya, no. So what will happen? If you're the buyer, what will you get? Of course, the first thing that you'll get is the land. And second, you will get the tenant. Yes, the same tenant po. Makukuha ninyo yan sa inyong transaction. Now, suppose the tenant says, I refuse. Anong I refuse? I refuse the sale. Bakit ka naman mag-refuse sa sale? Wherein, you should have exercised your right of preemption or right of redemption as the case may be. Basta, kahit hindi ko in-exercise, ayaw ko yung bentahan nila. And ayaw ko rin yung new owner na yan. Gusto ko yung dati lang na landowner kasi mabait, tsaka makasundo kami. Question is, can the agricultural tenant refuse? The answer is, he cannot refuse. Hindi pala ako makarefuse. So, ayaw ko na. Terminate ko na itong agricultural lease contract namin. Itong leasehold system namin. And give me money. Bigyan mo ko ng disturbance compensation. I will voluntarily relinquish or surrender this landholding to you. The question is he entitled to that disturbance compensation? And the answer is no. Because what the law guarantees to that agricultural land tenant is the right of preemption or the right of redemption, as the case may be. Kung hindi mo yan in-exercise, then it assumes that you are willing to remain as an agricultural tenant of the new landowner. But for humanitarian considerations, pwede kang bigyan ng seller and even the new landowner humlat, kung ayaw mo na talaga, or pwede kang bigyan ng pera. Pero take note, hindi ito obligatory na ibigay nila sa tenant. This is just voluntary financial help for humanitarian consideration. So, this is not technically a dispossession of the tenant. Kasi pag may dispossession, legal dispossession, pwede ka magkaroon ng disturbance compensation. Okay? So, let's proceed. Baliktarin natin ngayon. Ito ngayon si landowner, ayaw naman niya si tenant. Can he refuse the tenant? No. He cannot refuse the tenant. Why? Because the tenant enjoys what we call the security of land tenure. Kahit palipat-lipat yan from one landowner to another, still, he enjoys this security of land tenure. Kahit mamatay pa siya, pwede pa yan matransmit ang security of tenure niya doon sa members of the family who are willing to continue the agricultural leasehold agreement. So, ibig sabihin, they have the same agricultural leasehold contract, the same tenant, but this time, a new landowner. Yan po ang mangyayari. Now, sabihin naman ng landowner, gusto ko na maging farmer. Gusto ko nang i-cultivate or a member of my family will cultivate the land. So, Mr. Tenant, get out. I'm going to give you disturbance compensation. Is that allowed? Under Republic Act 63899, it is not allowed. It is prohibited. Wala nang disturbance compensation na sasabihin mo, I'm going to use the land and I want to become a farmer now. If you want to become a farmer, you become a farmer together with the tenant. You deal with him, you talk to him, and you share ideas o ano yung mga crops na itanim nyo. Mga things like that. Nandyan yan po sa batas. Being the relationship of a landowner and an agricultural tenant with respect sa mga crops na dapat itanim dun sa lupa. Of course, we'll not discuss that because talking about due diligence here. We could reserve that in another separate video lecture. Okay? So, yan po ang rason kung bakit po I separated the first discussion on agricultural tenancy issue wherein na-exercise niya ang right of preemption or right of redemption, and dito sa part 2, hindi niya na-exercise ang right of preemption or right of redemption. What happens? Yan po. Ngayon, ano po pala yung disturbance compensation? Kailangan nagkakaroon ng disturbance compensation. Okay, let us proceed. Now, if the purpose of the buyer of the property is agricultural purpose, follow natin yung setup na discuss natin. But if the purpose of the buyer is for residential, commercial, or industrial, meaning to say, he bought an agricultural property para i-develop niya into residential area, ang commercial or industrial. Lagay, gusto niya maging developer, gawa siya ng social housing, medium cost housing, o high-end housing dun sa area. Can he do that? Yes, but it must be that, number one, kailangan may zoning classification that that area is now zoned either as a residential, commercial, or industrial. Then after that, kailangan pa ng land use conversion from the DAR. Mind you, itong proseso na itong conversion, madugo ito. Talagang mataas ito na proseso. But, question here is that, suppose, nandyan yung lahat na yung bagay na yan, mga requirements na yan, can the tenant refuse? Nagagamitin na ito for residential, commercial, industrial, after complying with all those requirements. And the answer is that he cannot refuse. And maganda lang, this time, dito na papasok si disturbance compensation. Kasi dispossessed na siya eh. Dispossessed, taken away sa kanya ang possession sa property. Now, it may be legal dispossession, but under the law, he is entitled to a disturbance compensation. And how much? Disturbance compensation equivalent to 5 times the average of the gross harvest on his landholding during the last 5 preceding calendar year. So, if the average is 1 million times 5, that is 5 million, for example. Ganun po ang pag-compute ng disturbance compensation, which must be paid to the tenant. And that is his right under the law. Okay? So, yun ang ingatan po natin at alamin natin before you buy a property, an agricultural property. Ano ba talaga purpose mo? Agriculture? Kasi kung gusto mo maging farmer together with the tenant, then you have to know all those things that we discussed previously. Pero kung gusto mo maging developer or change mo into conversion, iba ang purpose ng pag-ano mo, then here is the rules. Here are the rules for you. Now, I am going to give you additional caveat for you buyer. Of course, remember that if your purpose is really to turn it into residential, commercial, industrial, you have to determine if it is a convertible land. Ang first step to determine if it can be converted is that you have to get a zoning classification from the local government unit. Kasi pag na-zone na siya residential, na-zone na siya commercial or industrial, ibig sabihin, pwede na siya i-convert even if the tax declaration of that property is still agricultural. So, pwede yun. And then after that, you proceed with the land use conversion from the DAR. Now, kasi meron din kasing mga areas that you have to understand that are highly restrictive areas for conversion. Ibig sabihin, pwede siya ma-convert pero highly restrictive. And maraming examples, and I will name a few, those environmentally critical areas with projects, and those agro-industrial croplands. Alam nyo, sometimes, itong pag-convert, pag highly restrictive, madugo po yan. Especially if it is not a housing project, it involves more than 5 hectares. Papasok ngayon ang Malacanang yan. Ang Presidential Agrarian Reform Council, ang PARC. They will be part of the deliberation on whether or not it can be converted. Dago na proseso. And remember also that there are those non-negotiable areas for conversion. Di mo pwede i-convert. Baka binili mo eh. Those that are classified as NIPAs by the DNR, National Integrated Protected Areas System. Hindi mo pwede i-convert. Those irrigable, and agricultural lands with irrigation facilities as determined by the National Irrigation Authority. So, mag-ingat po tayo because baka doon ma-fall ang mga transaction nyo. Baka ma-defeat ang purpose ninyo. Magdalamhati na lang kayo at sabihin, bakit ko binili ito? Hindi ko napag-aralan itong mga bagay na ito. Alright? That's it. So we will continue our discussion the next time and we will be discussing the lessees. Itong lessees ng residential, commercial, or industrial properties. Tapos ito sa agriculture eh. Ano ba mga karapatan nitong tao na ito kung merong bagong bibili ng property and there would be a new owner of that property? What are the rights of that new landowner? And what are the things to be considered by the landowner by the buyer before buying that property from the seller? So yun po ang pag-aaralan natin next time. So thank you and I'll see you again next time.